What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel for another conversation today. Now, when I was thinking about doing this conversation, it was actually going to be several questions that I was going to be addressing. And these are different questions that I get. Sometimes I get some. No, I do get some pretty interesting questions throughout the week in my inbox and stuff like that. And it's really difficult most times to navigate, who's just trolling me or who's sincerely struggling with some of these levels of questions. And I'm typically very honest with people when I'm dealing with them and we are engaging these type of conversations. Um, because I got to be me. And so I'm going to let them know, like, hey, are you trolling me? Because I'm going to be honest with you. The idea that this is the thing that's holding you up is a little unsettling to me, for me. And that just may be because I don't have that particular battle. So I get a whole bunch of questions. The most recent ones I got, which I think I talked about a little bit, where, a guy said he can't stop. It's hard for him to stop believing in God because he believes in ghosts. And I'm like, but ghosts have nothing to do with God for the most part, unless you're talking about the Holy Ghost. And then he goes on to say, and my aunt has a story where she saw a ghost go into an orb. And so therefore I believe in the Christian God. None of that equals a Christian God. Like, you didn't get any of that from the Bible. So what you believe in is belief. And that's a whole nother can of worms. You just believe in magical stuff. And for whatever reason, you would believe that if anything magical happens, that means that the Christian God exists. And I'm like, whoa, that is such a large leap that I know that there's no logic getting you there. So I don't know if you're a troll or if your critical thinking skills are just that defunct. And that's typically how I talk to people. If you present something like that to me, my first answer is going to be, you need to take some courses on critical thinking. You're trying to tackle questions without any of the tools you need, and so, but every now and then I get some questions that are a little more common, you know and so those are the questions we're going to deal with today. Like, we're going to deal with two of them in particularly. And the first in particular, I always add that extra "ly" on there. It's my mouth, I can do what I want. But one of those questions is going to be, what gives life meaning without God? I'm going to give you my thoughts on this. And of course, as many of you know, I tend to take a different approach with things, and we'll talk about it in a few. Before we jump in it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community channel or content in any way that makes sense for you. Make sure to share this video with someone who you think will appreciate the type of content that we have on this channel. And last but not least, check out our products, because we have some of the dopest stuff out there right now. We have merch, books, everything, man. So Amazon, you can find Christ Held Up and Black Non-Believers. Those are my two newest books. You could find the first book I ever published, which was called Significant, which I was writing while deconverting, though I didn't write anything about my deconversion in it. But read it and see if you can pick up the hints. And then my first fiction novel I wrote is right behind me. It's called Memphis, The Last Supper, One Family, Under Fire. This is one of those novel series that is going to zig when you thought it was going to zag. So if you really like reading, and that's a big book. It's a real book now. So if you buy that one, plan on reading it for a while. And then my wife also has a book out of poetry that she wrote wrote and published several years ago. So please go check that out as well. All right. And you know what's funny? Someone commented like, hey, can you please do these at the end of the videos too? Like, when you do stuff like that, here's a rule of thumb, everybody. When you ask a content creator to do something, please make damn sure they're not already doing it. Otherwise, you just demonstrated that you didn't make it to the end of the video. But even though you didn't make it to the end of the video, I appreciate your comment anyway, because yes, I do the same. I close my videos the same way I open them. It's literally a memorized script in my head. All right, so let's talk about these two questions. The first one is, what gives life meaning without a God? All right, so first, let's highlight one of the most glaring flaws in this question. Because I am one of those people. Like, people used to say there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I'm like, I've never bought into that. I understand the sentiment of it, but I've always felt uncomfortable every time someone has said that. Every time someone has said there's no such thing as a stupid question, I'd be like, I really wish they would clarify that, because there are such things as stupid questions. And this is one of them. But before I highlight the flaw, I'll tell you another one. And I think I've talked about this one before. A question that I really don't like, or I would say it this way: people don't like to ask me this question, because my answer, okay, so they'll say, Darante, what do you believe now? And I'll kind of look at them with, my eyebrows kind of curled in a little bit, furled in, frowning, furled, curled, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to lean in a little bit. And then they're going to start looking confused. And they're going to be like, okay, why are you leaning in? Because I'm waiting for you to finish your fucking sentence. What do you mean? Your sentence has a subject, but it does not have an object. Know that right? So predicate. Yeah, there we go. What is the actual object of this? What do I believe about what? Like, what did you know about my beliefs before? Since when did the word beliefs just mean what you believe specifically about the existence, or exclusively rather, about the existence of a God? This is a question that when I deconverted, I realized like how shallow and insignificant our conversations were really, and how we're not really having true conversations. Because when you say what do you believe, I still believe everything I believed before, except for these one or two, three things that I no longer believe. You know what I'm saying? I still believe in books. Okay. Still believe in desks. I still believe in these lights. Still believe in these computer monitors and shit. So no, the world is still spinning. My world has not fallen apart because the two-faced boogeyman is gone. You know what I'm saying? Good on one side, bad on the other side. That guy, that motherfucker. No, my world didn't fall apart, because that's what happens when the thing you believed in was not real in the first place. When you detach from that belief, nothing changes. No, because there was nothing there to do anything in the first place. So no. So what do I believe? My first thing is about what? Ask me something specific. We could be talking here all day. What do I believe about what? Jay-Z's new album? I thought it was pretty dope. You know what I'm saying? Latest album. Can't really say new anymore, right? I thought it was pretty dope. What do I believe about what? What do I believe about Marvel getting rid of Jonathan Majors? I was upset. I was excited about seeing a Black King, especially played by Jonathan, who was killing that part. But let's just be honest. I think we all saw the writing on the wall when they let Ant-Man beat his ass. Ain't no coming back from that shit. You couldn't even remember this dude's name, and then he beat your ass. Ain't no coming back from that. We knew what Marvel was doing. They was setting us up then. But anyway, the big point is you got to be more specific. When you have conversations with grown-ups, you gotta complete your sentences, baby. You gotta complete your sentences. Bless your heart. So what do I believe about what? And that's and see, but that's the gotcha, right? Because the question that they're trying to ask is, what did you replace God belief with? And it's like, why would I replace something that isn't necessary? Like, I'm one of those type of people. If I go into my closet and I find a shirt that I have not seen in months or years, whatnot, it's getting thrown or given away. All right? Because you have no utility here. You serve no purpose here no more. So for me, and I can't speak for everybody who's deconverted. Obviously, we all have individual experiences. But for me, my deconversion left no room to replace it with anything. Why would I want to replace something as useless as that? No, so I wasn't one of those people who decided I needed to go on a spiritual journey. I had already been on the spiritual journey. It was bullshit. I now wanted to go on a natural journey. You know, I want it to naturally be okay. Fuck that spiritual shit. You know, that spiritual shit. Like and I write about it in Black Non-Believers Next Door. I ended up having a conversation. It was either the year or the year before I fully deconverted, where I told one of my staff members at church that, listen, I am tired of pretending to be okay, and that's what spiritual journeys are, because there's no real solutions. That's why that's why we and this is why I often call out things that we call spiritual that are not spiritual. But ultimately, when we're trying to relegate something into the realm of spirituality, we're really just trying to put it in a place where we don't have to be accountable for anybody about the experiences that we're having. So most times when people use the word spirituality, they're using it as a scapegoat to say, I had an experience that can't be defined or measured. Therefore, it can't be criticized. And so often that's what people, at least from what I've seen, I've never seen anybody use the word spirituality other than myself and maybe Daniel Dennett. There was another guy, Michael DeToit, I think. And I'm sure there's some others, but all of us are atheists and none of us believe in supernaturalism. But everybody that I've seen who believes in some type of supernaturalism form of spirituality can never define what it is and can never give you anything other than a placebo. And yet many of them are charging for those services. That's scary for me. And the fact that's even happening in the secular community is just like, oh no, we let's not play those games. Um, and then there's also the pseudo secular community. And the pseudo secular community, they're not claiming to be a secular community. They're just communities that are non-religious, right? And so you got stuff. Oh, I hate to do it because I don't dislike these people. I just don't like their practices, and that's the Mind Valley people. If you've been watching my content for any period of time, you likely know that I have an affinity for stuff like meditation and affirmation from a naturalistic perspective. Um, I do have a meditation practice. I do affirmations, but mine is definitely more naturalistic, even more naturalistic than most people's, and maybe some of that comes from my former preaching life. Because as a preacher, like I was very serious about my faith. I was very serious about my religion. And so I prayed constantly, and I got to a place, hallelujah, that I was always in the spirit of prayer, always. And honestly, that ended up being a very helpful practice for me, because it's like I'm pretty much always in a meditative posture. And I don't mean that in any spooky way, in any way that gives me any type of um special abilities or anything. But even when I'm doing my content, like, I have notes here that I'm reading through, but even when I'm doing my content, whether it's live or pre-recorded, oftentimes you will notice I'll pause and reflect on something. I'll reword something. It's because I've been training myself for years to be incredibly internally focused. Now, for the first 2 decades, that internally focus was externally applied. So it was like whatever's going on in here is actually God and the devil. And so that's a mind fuck. But now I'm into now, I switch that shit and it's me. And so I'm listening to me at all times, or what's going on within me. And I'm actually able to disassociate, to be able to say, okay, that's actually not me. That's the language of my fucked up family. You can ignore that shit. Or that's not me. These are just some people who was over flattering my ass. You can ignore that shit too, because that will super inflate your fucking ego. So it's just kind of like a thing that helps me navigate. Okay, so I don't know how I got all the way over there, because that's not where we were intended to go. But let's kind of highlight some of the or one of the most glaring flaws in this question. And the question is, what gives life meaning without a God? So, if a child loses a parent, does the child lose meaning? This is a serious question. Even though the child was generated by the parent, its meaning, in healthy cases, isn't attached to the existence or belief in the parents. Now, I highlight that only to show that we have no evidence other than religious presumption to assume that purpose is in any way inherent, that meaning is in any way inherent or predicated on the existence of a creator or a progenitor. There's no evidence for you're putting the cart, like you're not even putting the cart before the horse. You're jumping towards something that in this case literally doesn't exist. And what I say literally doesn't exist, I'm not necessarily talking just about God in this sense, but literally the idea of inherent meaning, that meaning is somehow inherited, that meaning is somehow assigned. What evidence do you have over that? And somebody said, well, whoever created the car, they assigned the meaning of the car, the purpose or the meaning to the car. And I wonder if that's actually accurate. Okay, so who determines the active purpose of a thing? The creator or the possessor? Who determines the active purpose of a thing? Is it the creator of it or is it the possessor of it? In all cases of measurable reality, even when a creator of a thing has very strict use cases for a tool, it is still the possessor who determines the purpose. Yep. Doesn't matter what you said the hammer was for. It's what I determined to use it for in my hand that gives it purpose. Ain't that amazing? Ain't that amazing? Doesn't matter what you designed the plane for. It's the possessor of the plane who gets to determine the meaning of that or the creator of that. That's why wealthy people, yikes, right? They buy yachts and then what do? They name them, and they put the name on them. But hey, they're not the only folks to do that. Poor people, what do? When we buy cars, we name them sometimes. I had an Impala. Her name was Pamela. You see how that works? Yeah, yeah. I like doing stuff like that. But yeah, so purpose, number one, we have no reason to attach ourselves to this idea that purpose or meaning is somehow inherited, that it's inherited. I have no reason. Like, so in order to first say that meaning can only come from God, you'd first have to demonstrate that meaning is indeed inherited. And we just don't have any evidence of that as a solid concept, that meaning isn't inherited. You know, when it comes to living things, purpose is a characteristic of the possessors, not an assignment from a creator or a progenitor. Parents kind of know that, you think you are in the beginning. Yes, you think you're assigning that purpose. You think you are assigning meaning. And then by the time they become teenagers and up, they start showing you what they really mean. Because meaning is something that we make for ourselves. We are the meaning makers outside of extreme situations, So if God is the assigner of purpose, humanity's ability to deviate from said assignment would speak to the weakness of the assigner. Why would you set yourself up for that failure? Like Christians, don't do that to yourself. You know, if purpose is something that can only be assigned by God, and God does indeed assign purpose, then when God assigns a purpose and that purpose is rejected, God's assignment is weak. That's how that works. In other words, God's word is weak and cannot fulfill what it set out to do, which this shouldn't be a shocker because according to most branches of Christianity, Jesus dying on the cross was God's most powerful act to save the world. Yet they also believe that Jesus still has to come back to save the world. Weak sauce. Like this, this is bad. This is bad. But that's just one flaw in this argument. Another, or a flaw in this question, rather. Another flaw is that this argument is not just tied to meaning, but morality and even life itself from the very same clause as God as the source of these things, of these elements of our existence. You know what I'm saying? So it is, you can't have meaning without God because God is the source of meaning. Or it is presented as, you can't explain your meaning without God because God is the source of meaning. But it's also, God is the source of morality. God is the source of life. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. All good things come from the Father. That's the idea, right? That's the idea. Okay. Therefore, if a person cannot have morality or meaning or without a God, then they should also not have access to life based off of the same causal argument. So if you don't have God, oh, you can't have purpose. If you don't have God, oh, you can't have morality. If this clause is to be true and to be consistently applied, then that would mean that, oh yeah, also if you're rejecting God, you are also rejecting life, like real life, not afterlife, not ever, ever, ever life, not never, never land life, not made some shit up life, but actual verifiable life. Because when we're talking about morality and meaning, we're not talking about morality and meaning in the other world, other side. We're not talking about morality and meaning in the afterlife. We're talking about morality and meaning right now, in the here and now. So when we're talking about life, we would also be talking about it right now, in the here and now. So if I cannot have morality without a God, then I also would not be able to have life without a God. And yet here I am, alive and well, you know. Hmm. Yikes. See? This means that God's presence is either unnecessary, or as some would say, irrevocable, which means God is so good that nothing I could do could take his presence from me. Okay, well, either route nullifies the claims of the majority of Christians as bullshit and further deprives the God concept of any practical utility. If I could do whatever the fuck I want to do and it does not matter, then it doesn't matter. You get it? That's how that works. But see, like, and honestly, I thought, and I did think wrong. I now realize that we're not all having the same experience, even when we're experiencing the same things. But I thought that the vast majority of us learned these lessons in school. But obviously, I didn't. Like, I learned them about interacting with people, but I definitely didn't apply them to my faith. But like, yeah, if something is not useful, then it's not useful, no matter how useful somebody tries to say it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're trying to fix something that's broken on your car and your friend says, I have this super tool that can fix anything on your car. And you're like, oh, great, man. Can I use it? And he's like, well, I don't know. You can only see it if you have faith. You're gonna call bullshit on that really quick and just look past that motherfucker till you can find somebody with some good sense. You know, that's that's the way that I do. Um, but yeah, so and a God that is all powerful but incapable, and a God that is all lovable but indetectable, is a contradiction of such magnitude that its existence isn't worthy of conversation. It's it's all powerful but incapable of demonstrating that power. It's all loving but undetectable. Oh no, this is a scam. This is a scam. You know, just like this feels like sitting in a timeshare presentation, which, to be fair, all timeshare presentations aren't scams, but damn it, they're kind of scammy. All right. So, another thing that I like to bring to this question was the meaning of life without a God. Life is verifiable, God is not. So we start there. How could something that is unverifiable be presumed to be the source of anything until it is indeed verified? Now, when I say unverified or unverifiable, I don't necessarily mean that it has been proven to exist beyond a doubt, because that's typically not how we approach things in physics. And I say we. I'm not a physicist, so oh no, don't ask me none of them questions. But typically, the way that we approach, or that they approach, whether something could possibly exist, is if there is a cause or reason for that existence. There is something in the data that suggests that something is happening here. And so there should be something here. This is how we found many of the planets in our solar system, because based off of the movements of other things, currently, we were able to say, because of this, which looks like an anomaly, this is either an anomaly, or there's something on the other side of this that's causing a pull or a chain reaction that's causing these numbers to fluctuate in a way that we could not predict. And so then they start thinking about all of the possibilities that could be happening, that could be creating that anomaly, until they can come up with a solid enough hypothesis to create a norm, or a natural projection of what could be causing it. And at that moment, they still don't know what it is, but they know enough that something is there to be able to say this is somewhat verified. We're not able to describe it yet, but we can describe the impacts that it's having on other things, which are measurable. All right. So when I talk about verifiable, I'm not talking about having all of the answers, but I am talking about having something that we have a measurable reason to attach ourselves to the possibility of existence. And when it comes to God, we do not. When it comes to the evidence of a creator who is who can be attached to who can be attached to the Christian religion or the Muslim religion or even the Jewish religion, nope, that's so far gone. Nope, those days are over. Those days are done. Like, no, there's, and so, yeah, there are atheists who will be honest and say, no, there could be a possibility of something out there. Yeah, and that's being intellectually honest. There could be a possibility. We don't have a reason to believe that there is. That's how speculation works, right? But as far as the Christian God, the God of the Bible, oh yeah, that guy doesn't exist unless everything in the Bible about him is wrong, which is likely the most accurate thing. If there was a God, everything in these books is wrong. It's not an active God or anything like that. So I don't, yikes. And like, if you needed a book to be introduced to the character, then the character doesn't exist in real life. Just trying to help you there. If you needed a book, you know, this is shameful. All right, so life is verifiable. God is not. We can verify life stretching back for billions of years without any evidence of divine intervention in a way that significantly contradicts biblical accounts, formerly held as true by populations submitted to sociocultural engine of missional Christianity. Which, again, my big point here is that we don't have the anomaly that would suggest a creative force. Now, the problem with this being a Christian claim is that Christians don't claim an old earth for the most part, nor do they claim an old universe for the most part, nor do they subscribe to evolution for the most part. Christians believe, for the most part, that roughly around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, God created a garden and made man out of mud. Okay. When you believe that somebody made you, okay, it becomes easy then to believe that life then requires a maker. But it is very important to realize that there was no evidence that led to that belief. Um, and for the most part, we have romanticized that belief in a way that ancient cultures did not have an attachment towards, like, because most religions in ancient cultures were ethnocentric political entities. That's what they existed for. Um, so there wasn't a necessity to believe in, to literally attach yourself to the belief that your God was the maker of all things. These were political fables. You know, it's us who have romanticized these political fables into some type of formulation of truth. And the evidence of this is that many of these ancient cultures, while having this poetic language, still had centers of learning, of trying to figure out what the world around them looked like, which meant that they did not believe that their understanding was an accurate reflection of reality. They understood it to be their sociocultural narrative that warranted them with solidarity. Now, that's my hypothesis from a sociological perspective. Now, so the big point is, without the unreasonable belief, because again, I have no reason to believe that man was formed out of mud and that woman was formed out of a rib that used to be mud. I have no reason to believe that. So, because I have no reasonable belief in a maker, it's not a requirement. I have no reason to believe it. There is no evidence to believe it. It's just a story. But there is evidence for evolution. And I'm not just talking about fossil evidence. There's evidence from conception to birth. Certainly is. So again, kind of like the meaning thing, there's not been any demonstration that a maker is required. You know? All right. And that also goes back to just the fact that, again, if non-believers are still living, then life has nothing to do with belief. Period. Right? But then another question that gets asked, and this one I've answered in a few ways, but no, I've talked about how morality is developed. But this is a different type of question. This one is, why should you be moral if there are no divine consequences for bad actions? Now, in my humble opinion, this question is a glaring red flag of immaturity at alarming levels. If a person is being sincere when they ask this type of question, they are implying that they find it very difficult to be civil to other human beings without a belief in a boogeyman. And I think we need to stop taking that lightly, because there are likely some significant underlying impulse control issues that need to be addressed ASAP before they cause harm to somebody, if they're not already doing so. Because oftentimes people with those types of issues at that type of maturity level, they are acting out on those impulses and then and then allowing God's mercy to cover their sins. Yeah. So every time you hear somebody say some shit like that, you might want to put in an anonymous phone call for somebody to check in on what's going on at their house. You know, I'm being tongue in cheek, but I'm being serious at the same time. Um, so why should you be moral if there are no divine consequences for bad actions? Surprise, surprise, because there are fucking actual consequences for bad actions, right? Like, why would I need divine consequences if there are actual consequences? Oh my God, like, how do you skip over reality to, like, stop this, man? All right, so because I successfully matriculated through childhood, I actually don't need laws to be written for me to know that some action will yield some consequence. Even the Bible says that the law is for the lawless, it's for the people who are incapable of governing themselves. So, yikes. Um, no, if you've lived life, then you already know that actions have consequences. That's not because of a God. When you hit somebody, they're not hitting you back because God told them to. They're hitting you back because you hit them. You had an action, they had a reaction. This is life. Bam, physics. Hello. Science wins again, bitch. You know what I'm saying? But no, physics. I pay attention to the impact my actions have on others and the world around me. And I measure the outcomes to learn how to navigate without causing unnecessary harm. And that's just living life, right? That's what we all do. We're not the only ones who do it. We're not the only species who do this. Um, Actual consequences are more are an actual thing. So no, the people out here who are doing what they do, but only because God said so or a book says so, are people who are incapable of valuing the human experience. Which in most cases, that's something that you've robbed yourself of through indoctrination. Because most children learn the value of morality between the ages of 2 and 4, you know, especially if they have siblings, you know, or especially if they're raised by a single parent. You talk to a lot of single parents, and you can see real quick the more how the journey, if they're willing to pay attention, the journey of their children's moral development. When those children sees their parent cry and wants to do something nice for them, that child has learned that doing something nice for other people makes them feel better. Not that doing something nice for other people makes my imaginary friend smile, which would again be incredibly dismissive of the person you're doing it for if you're only doing it for your imaginary friend, which is a problem that I do call out with people who have these type of superstitious beliefs. And unfortunately, even when people deconvert, they still attach themselves to these type of superstitions where they are doing stuff for people without actually considering the people that they're doing stuff for. It's real easy to be superstitious. It's just as easy as being lazy. It's just as easy as being inconsiderate. That's all it is. That's what it comes from. Laziness and inconsiderate. You know? Yeah, but no, it's there are actual consequences for bad actions, and we pay attention to them. Those consequences aren't baked in. Those consequences are a result of being alive. Those consequences are a result of being thinking beings and having to deal with other thinking beings. And our whole relationship with life has been we have to learn as we go. All right. My biggest concern with religion, or specifically with religious superstition, is that it is assuming that people who did not have the tools to know the information learned everything they needed to know over 2,000 years ago, and we should be sticking with that. In spite of everything that we've learned since then, you imagine people believing that we learned everything that we needed to learn 2,000 years ago, and we should only be sticking to that, but yet they are so disingenuous that they actually use the internet, light bulbs, computers, televisions, and everything else that has been invented since then. You know, I can continue, but I'm going to stop. All right. And because the question is, why should you be moral if there are no divine consequences for bad actions? Here's the thing here. If divine consequences were truly a threat or a modifier of behavior, churches would be the safest place on the planet. And yet we found that they're not protected from storms, which are acts of God. They're not protected from bombers. They're not protected from gunmen. And they're not protected from predatory preachers. And churches get get scammed by third party vendors as scammers more than any other nonprofit organization in this country. There are no divine consequences. There are only real consequences. And the problem is, people who believe in divine consequences will often excuse people for doing the most heinous things because they're like, they're going to get their comeuppance on the other side. Oh, okay. Um, but this is honestly a question that we've answered in theory and in practice over species. So much so that it permeates much of our fiction, much of the stories that we tell ourselves. We already know why we are moral in absence of any type of divine guidance. Life gets extremely uncomfortable and unproductive when we are uncooperative. And it has often been our battles with scarcity that has given us the clarity to understand that cooperation is survival. You know, that's the answer. Why should we be to continue to survive? Again, the fact that anyone would ask this question out loud is chilling. Oh, why should I be moral? Whoa, bruh. In 2024? Mm. So the whole idea that life needs a God for meaning falls apart under basic scrutiny. Saying we need a creator for purpose is like claiming a child loses all meaning if their parent dies. Obviously ridiculous. In reality, whoever owns something decides how to use it, not the one who made it. That applies to everything. Our purpose isn't dictated by some cosmic overlord. It's a product of our own choices and circumstances. It's a product of our own lived experiences and how we choose to navigate it. If God supposedly hands out meaning, then us humans blowing off that divine plan left and right would be a monumental fail on God's part. And isn't it telling that God's ultimate acts still need follow up? It's like saying God did this grand gesture, but he still has to come back and clean up. Meanwhile, non believers are just fine living meaningful moral lives without some deity breathing down their necks, which further exposes the emptiness of the claim that God is somehow necessary, that God is somehow a requirement, that God is somehow essential for meaning or even basic existence. A so called all powerful, all loving God that nobody can verify and who can't even keep his own subjects in line? That's a contradiction so massive it's hardly worth discussing. Life, on the other hand, is verifiable. We've got billions of years of evidence, and none of it screams divine intervention. We understand natural processes and cause and effect just fine without wedging God into the gaps. And the moral argument, if someone thinks they need a God to know it's wrong to harm others, that's a huge red flag. Like they can't behave unless some supernatural cosmic space pimp is threatening them. That's just sad. Humanity, as we've proven, gets along, or at least tries, because cooperation and empathy serve our survival and our sanity, not because we're bribed or blackmailed by divine edict. In other words, we don't need God for meaning. We've got our own capacity for understanding, empathy, creativity, and shared experience. We define our own purpose, figure out our own morality, and get along imperfectly, but determinedly, without hitching our value and life's meaning to unverified supernatural claims. We are the meaning makers. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation today. I've definitely enjoyed having it with you. Listen, if you haven't already, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, Consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community channel or content in any way that makes sense for you. Make sure to share this video with somebody who you think will get some value out of these type of conversations. And of course, check out our products. We have some of the dopest stuff out, man. We got merch, hoodies, t-shirts, cups, stickers. I got to get some hats on there because I need some more hats now, and I would like to wear my own hats. That would be nice. And of course, we have books. My newest book, Black Non-Believer Next Door, is available for sale right now. You owe it to yourself to go check it out, and then also go check out our merch too. It's around the giving season, so go find something dope to give somebody. All right, I think that's all I have for now, man. I love y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Until next time. Keep rising, stay progressive, and if you can, stay beautiful. I'll holla.